my body on your body.
Rub my body on your body.
Let me rub my body.
Your body.
I just get paid. I want to play. The vibes is right. I wanna hug up tight. No time to waste. I wanna work my ways. So come on, babes. Give me a taste. I wanna rub my body on your body.
I wanna rub my body on your body.
Let me rub my body on your body.
I wanna rub my body on your body.
I wanna rub and love up. I wanna rub and kiss up. I wanna rub and jam up. I wanna rub and rub up. I wanna rub my body on your body.
I wanna rub my body on your body.
Let me rub my body on your body.
I wanna rub my body on your body.
Well, you know, I'm feeling, 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 I'm feeling. Smoke in my brain, I wanna do my thing. Work up a sweat until I soak in wet. Rub your body, show no mercy, because I'm feeling tipsy, I'm feeling freaky. I wanna rub my body on your body.
I wanna rub my body on your body.
Let me rub my body on your body.
I wanna rub my body on your body.
I wanna rub and love up. I wanna rub and kiss up. I wanna rub and jam up. I wanna rub and rub up. I wanna rub my body on your body.
I wanna rub my body on your body.
Let me rub my body on your body.
I wanna rub my body on your body.
If you are looking to have your statutory declaration, affidavit of income, identity, damage or lost passport, lost license, tenancy agreement, agreement of settlement, power of attorney, last will and testament, and certification of documents, then you need to visit the Alistair Collins firm, located at the Killian Mall, 162 Lamaha Street in Georgetown, between Camp and Waterloo Street. Alistair Collins is a commissioner of oaths and a justice of the peace. Make certain you visit him or call for more information at 649-6410 or 685-6448 or 503-1451. And there's adequate parking available. Go down to the Alistair Collins firm and have all of your legal issues settled and brought to the fore. Alistair Collins firm. Contact them at Alistair Collins firm,
This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them long logy, now you got them bungalow. Long time got them long logy, now you got them bungalow. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them dirty dam, now you got them concrete road. Long time got them dirty dam, now you got them concrete road. Long time got them dirty dam, now you got them concrete road. Long time got them dirty dam, now you got them concrete road. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them jug lamp, now you got them electric light. Long time got them jug lamp, now you got them electric light. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them broad bottom, now you got them tight straight. Long time got them broad bottom, now you got them tight straight. Long time got them broad bottom, now you got them tight straight. Long time got them broad bottom, now you got them tight straight. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them broad churia, now you got them bamboo jai. Long time got them broad churia, now you got them bamboo jai. Long time got.
All right. Hey, good evening. I'm right here. I'm right here with you, right? And we are going to be on for 1 hour. I don't know. We were hoping to be joined with those guys out in our studios in Guyana, but for some reason, here we are. Here I am, all alone, just with you for 1 hour. Technical problems. That's all I wish to say. Technical problems. Because we wanted to talk about the catfish regime and the many lies. You heard last evening what happened. You heard those guys, former ministers, finance minister and minister of infrastructure. That is Finance Minister Winston Jordan and Infrastructure Minister David Patterson. They set the record straight. They were able to shoot that balloon down, that inflated balloon, Jack Dale's balloon down, with his pack of lies upon lies upon lies. Hey, guess what though? The show goes on, even though it's not the show that we prepared for you this evening. Let me fix my tie just to please some of you, right? I can't come looking like some of those guys on the other side, right? And when I say the other side, straight down Rob Street. All right, so what is it that we're going to talk about tonight? So many different things that I want to talk with you guys about. I've noticed some folks were asking about the YouTube channel. Yes, we are broadcasting via YouTube as well. So you can get us there. And I do believe that if you want to be notified whenever we're on Ben Shop Radio, you have to subscribe to the YouTube channel, the straight up YouTube channel. So in event that you haven't subscribed as yet, here's your opportunity. I'll give you about a minute to subscribe. And let's get into some business here this evening, right? But before we do, let me say good evening to all the beautiful people out there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Those beautiful people who are standing up against a dictator. That's dictator Ralph Gonzalez. He is a dictator. I have noticed that he is rounding up some political opponents, those on the opposition side, and mainly females, and he's charging them, his goons in the police force. They're charging these people. One lady, Lizette King, was actually arrested earlier today, and she was released without being charged, and rightfully so. They have picked up another woman, and they charged her. There's no evidence, there's nothing at all, but the magistrate released her on bail I think 3,000 EU dollars today. So those are the developments out in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're glad that she's out on bail, and we're glad that Lizette King is also out. If Lizette is listening, and those who are in St. Vincent and the Grenadines at the moment, we are with you. All of us are with you guys. Now, last evening, those of you who listened to that, that's kind of like a full pen kind of interview done by Neil Marks, you know. And by the way, tell Neil Marks the next time he's doing a serious interview for him to wear socks, you know. But then again, who am I to give these people any sort of proper tips as to how to conduct proper shows? But in that interview last evening, Jack Dio said, and I want to repeat, he said a lot of things that were false, propaganda in nature, right? Lots of things he said, propaganda in nature. And this is what we do. We break them down, we set them apart, and we expose Jack Dio and his many lies. He spoke of the Hope Canal. For some reason, I don't know why he didn't name it the Jack Dio Canal, but he named it the Hope Canal. And this is what he said, that one of the good things that he did was the Hope Canal. But I'll tell you guys, since they have wasted billions of dollars on the Hope Canal, Jack Dio boasted and bragged last evening that there was no flooding, there was nothing in Region 4, in Region 5, and all these different things he said, right? He said it last evening. You know, like I said, in our studio, we're having some slight problems, but we'll show you what he said. Maybe not tonight, but what we'll show you tonight is what has happened in Georgetown, in Region 4. And mind you, this Jack Dio who is saying that flooding is no longer part of Region 4 or whatever. Little rain fell earlier today in beautiful Georgetown, Guyana. And this is what happened. Thanks to the Hope Canal and the billions of dollars wasted by Jack Dio and his cronies. I want the world to see what happened in Georgetown today.
Man, look at this water here. This is unbelievable.
Together unbeatable. Get yours today. Freeze tropical rhythms. So different. So good together.
Main Street.
Hey, baby. What's up?
Hey, baby. Car's getting some trouble. Where should I take it?
Water's almost at my car door.
Mechanics look good. You can swing by now. We'll take care of it.
No?
The area automotive limited. They're the authorized tool and service
And now again, this is the same Jack Dio in that propaganda sit-down chit-chat with Neil Marks. Propaganda. That's what it is, propaganda. You heard Jack Dio, those of you who listened. And I listened for the first time because I wanted to rip him apart with his lies. He's known for lying. Lots and lots of lies. And this guy gets away with the lies because of his support base. When he sits there and he lies like that, they believe him. Most of them believe him. They believe his lies. They believe his propaganda. And that is to be expected, right? So when he lied about the Hope Canal, and then the next morning, hours after, he lied. Here's what, again, I show you. I want you to prove, because it is Jack Dio who lied about Hope Canal, wasted hundreds of millions of your dollars, your taxpayer paying dollars. That is exactly what he did. He lied. You heard from Winston Jordan, the former Minister of Health, who set the record straight, along with David Patterson, former Minister of Infrastructure. Here is the evidence again. Georgetown has never been like this. Never been like this in the 5 years of the APNU AFC government. And we've got to face reality. Look at what has happened in less than a year.
Man, look at this water here. This is unbelievable.
Separately magnificent, together unbeatable. Get yours today. Freeze tropical rhythms, so different, so good together.
Main Street.
Hey baby, what's up?
Hey, baby. Car's getting some trouble. Where should I take it?
Water's almost at my car door.
Mechanic's no good. You can swing by now. We'll take care of it.
No.
The area automotive limited. They're the authorized company.
And now that's what they do. That's what Jack Dare feeds off of, lies and propaganda. And you can tell when he begins to lie. Well, throughout the interview, he lied. And Neil Marks, just sat there, with no socks or nothing. I mean, Mr. Jack Dare, so you tell me something that you begin. I'm sorry. Good evening to Neil Marks. We know Neil Marks is on a mission, propaganda mission. It's not about any fear or any sort of professional interview. We all know what that interview was about. He couldn't have done anything better because remember, Neil Marks is, whilst he tried to conduct a serious interview, we saw the propaganda for the most part. Neil Marks is, he is a member of the Guyana Press Association, and he is also, I believe, mind you, the public relations officer for the first lady of Guyana. Yeah, so that's what he does. So you all understand the propaganda and the propaganda game. But that propaganda last evening with Pirate Jack Dare didn't work. We all know it didn't work. His lies were exposed almost immediately. Thanks to Winston Jordan and David Patterson for that swift reaction towards those lies. Now, apart from the Hope Canal, there were lots of other lies about the Berbice River Bridge. We all know that it was far more expensive and dangerous for the bridge to be right at the mouth of the Berbice River. He didn't want to put it in an area that would have been shorter, cheaper, and sweeter, and the economy out in New Amsterdam would have been booming. All of the engineers advised him against the Berbice River Bridge being at the mouth of the Berbice River. He didn't listen to them because his only intention was to spite the people of New Amsterdam and the surrounding areas. So what he wanted to do was to strangle them economically. So business isn't booming in New Amsterdam right now. Business isn't booming in the surrounding areas of New Amsterdam. None whatsoever. Compliments of Jack Dare and his vindictive, racist agenda. And now he might come up with different things to say why the bridge didn't go there. But Jack Dare likes to play that he's an expert in everything. But we know that the only thing he's an expert in is lying and the sort of cheap propaganda and in order to score political points. And again, I say that some of his supporters do fall for that trap. Because if you don't know him, he has such a soft way of doing things and saying things that you would believe him. His lies upon lies upon lies. And so there are a couple of things that I want to break down here tonight. We already did that with the Hope, the so-called Hope Canal. That is not finished, completed, but yet he's boasting and bragging about that. It is a failure. And for those of you who are now joining us, here is why the Hope Canal that Jack Dare is saying is a success story for him and the PPP. It's just another propaganda. It's another lie. Here is the evidence. Again, this morning rain fell for a couple of minutes in Georgetown and, of course, other parts. But people were bawling out. I'm just talking about flooding right now. Here.
Man, look at this water here. This is unbelievable.
So many more, separately magnificent, together unbeatable. Get yours today. Praise tropical rhythms, so different, so good together.
Now, if the Hope Canal was so good, if the Hope Canal was there to prevent flooding in Region 4, then can the supporters of Jack Deere, some of them are right here on this live, some of them are listening on the ground via 107.1 FM, can they say what exactly happened? Why is it that almost all over Georgetown was flooded and some parts of East Coast flooded this morning after just a little bit of rain? Another lie by Jack Deere. Hope Canal has no future. There is no hope. People have wasted their tax dollars, hundreds of millions of tax dollars, but yet it continues to flood and flood and flood. Jack Deere lied again that Hope Canal was able to save Region 5. That is not true. During the flooding, you saw what happened to Region 5. There was a member of parliament for the coalition that was on, showing you the evidence of areas that were flooded. And if the Hope Canal had offered some hope to the people of Region 5, then they would not have experienced the flood that they did. The Hope Canal didn't do the trick. Waste of taxpayers' money. The Hope Canal hasn't done the trick for Region 4 also in Georgetown and other parts of East Coast. Jack Deere has lied. We take that off the list. And now, I don't want to get into his personal life. It's none of my business. But since he was, quote unquote, the president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, then we can talk about that. He said to the nation that he was married. And so the nation believed that he was married. It appeared as though it was just a facade, just something that was cooked up to make the public believe, including his support base, that he was indeed a married man, when in fact he wasn't legally married. And so he lied to the nation that he and Auntie were married. But Auntie came out and said that they weren't legally married. I believe that's how the story goes, that he wasn't legally married. I don't know. But that's a lie that is going to stay with the Guyanese public for 20 plus years and more. It has stayed, it has been with the public for almost 20 years now, and it will continue to be with the public for the next 20. I'm using the word 20, the letters, the number 20 for a particular reason tonight. 20. I will get to 20 shortly, right? But before I get to 20, Jack Deere also spoke about GPL. Big lies upon lies upon lies. And here's what, let's break it down. For 23 years they have been in office. They haven't fixed the problems at GPL. They can't say that they have inherited these problems, but they haven't fixed the problem in 23 years at GPL. And now here's a simple lie. But it was Patterson, David Patterson, the Honorable Member of Parliament and former Minister of Infrastructure. He had responsibilities for the Guyana Power and Light. He broke it down for you last night to expose again another lie of Barrett Jack Deere, another lie of Jack Deere. This guy just can't help himself. He lies upon lies upon lies, even when the evidence is quite clear. So in the case of GPL, they couldn't fix it for 23 years. They mismanaged that agency. wasted billions of dollars, billions upon billions of your hard-earned tax-paying dollars to fix the problems at GPL that they couldn't fix at all. They just couldn't fix it at all. But when the APNU AFC government got into, they were in office, the APNU AFC were in office, guess what? We saw less blockout. The APNU AFC government tried their utmost in ensuring that there were minimum amount of blockouts. And they did that. And so kudos to them. Let's tap them on the back. Kudos. And those of you PPP supporters who are watching, and especially those of you who have your heads in the sand turned upside down, I know many of you cannot stomach the truth. Because regardless of how much propaganda and lies upon lies, Jack Deere say to you guys, you jump up on a mountaintop, or you lift yourselves up on a pira. For those of you who know what pira is, it's like a little wooden bench, like a pira. And you jumped on top of that pira and you start sing as though Jack Deere just said something that made the world of sense. And so you love that, not realizing that it's propaganda, not realizing that he has lied to you and that he continues to lie to you. All of you. Now let's get to GPL. Again, for 23 years, they couldn't fix the problem. But suddenly, Jack Deere wants you guys to believe, and that's part of the propaganda last evening with Neil Marks. That's part of the propaganda. I'm sorry I paused when I said Neil Marks. All right? It's part of the propaganda game with these folks. Now, here's what the truth is about GPL. We all know the 23 years, the problems. Many of us lived through that. The problems, the darkness, equipment upon equipment damaged. It was Joey Jagan who went in front of GPL, threw himself on the ground and said that he's not going to move, that they destroyed, GPL damaged his equipment, and that they weren't doing anything. They weren't doing a thing, and that was under the PPP. When Chetty Jagan got into office, one of the first things that he said, he's going to, of course, change the Constitution to get rid of, for those of us who remember on the campaign, Chetty Jagan, what he said. But he's dead and gone. We're talking about GPL. He said that his government top priority is to fix GPL. At that time, it was called Guyana Light Power or Guyana Electricity Corporation, GEC. They changed the name to Guyana Power and Light. Nothing. Corruption upon corruption upon corruption. Look at the individuals they put to head those agency, that particular agency. Corruption upon corruption, every single day, corruption upon corruption upon corruption. They couldn't fix it. So when the coalition got into office, they tried their best. And they got onto something. They started to make money, save you, the taxpayers, billions of dollars. Because under the PPP, the more blockouts, guess what? The more money they get to rob you, the people. So it is not like they couldn't have fixed the blockout or GPL. They could have. But every single time they have blockouts around, guess what? They call their friends and their cronies and they have to fix it, whatever they claim the problems are. And it costs you, the taxpayers, hundreds of millions of dollars. As David Patterson said, the Honorable MP, he said, it's a Ponzi scheme. And that's what's happening at GPL, a Ponzi scheme. There was one of those big manager or senior officer at GPL charged with corruption and all these different things. Lots and lots of allegations. Guess who is back heading that company? The same guy. And now they may want to say trumped up charges and all sorts of things, but we all know better, right? We all know how the PPP operates. So they're not going to fool us with that. So GPL, another lie by Barrett Jackdaw. They couldn't fix it in 23 years. What makes you think that they can fix it now? And we're going to get to that before I go. What makes you think they could fix it now when they couldn't fix it in 23 years? And then when the coalition got into office, Jackdaw sat there with this bare face, trying to take credit, trying to say to you that because they had minimum amount of blockouts under the coalition, that it was a result of things that they did in the PPP government. No, that's a lie. If they were doing all these things, how come under the PPP regime for 20-something years, there was all these blockouts and they couldn't fix the problem? Now, again, people are not going to buy into Jackdaw and his propaganda. But if his supporters, a few of them, want to buy that, then they're free to do so, right? All of them are free to do so. But we know that they know the truth. And the truth is, Jackdaw continues to spread propaganda and he continues to lie upon lies upon lies. The evidence is clear. And now, if you're now joining us, let me say good evening and welcome you. I was expecting to have at least 2 or 3 persons on, but because of some slight hiccups, some slight problems, we can't have them on tonight. Not their fault, but our fault. All right? So I accept full responsibility for that. Now let me check some. I'm reading some of your comments. Good night to all of you. What else can we continue? There's this thing about the sugar industry. Winston Jordan, former finance minister, spoke at length about that, along with David Patterson, and others spoke about it on numerous occasions. The other lie is that Jackdaw and the PPP, they continue to peddle this lie that the coalition government fired or sent home 7,000 sugar workers. I want the PPP supporters who are watching this evening to understand that that is a lie, another lie, L-I-E, lie. Not 7,000, but a little over 4,000 sugar workers were sent home. This sent home wasn't as a result of what the coalition did. The sending home of sugar workers started under the PPP regime. Jackdaw is not going to accept, he's not going to admit that, but that is the truth. What the coalition did was save the 4,000 sugar workers. They got all of their benefits, every single thing they got. And on top of that, the coalition government started to train them in every area. They got lands, they got everything. So it is not like they were fired and sent on the breadline with nothing to feed their families. Sugar workers who would have experienced this sort of good treatment under the coalition ought to be thankful to the coalition, the APNU-AFC government, for doing that. Because the PPP under Jackdaw and Ramotar, and even under Ali, do not care about them. do not care about their welfare. They just don't. What Jack Deere and them were more concerned about is that those in the hierarchy of the Gaisuko were getting millions upon millions of dollars in terms of their salaries at the end of the month. Millions. And that is why Gaisuko is virtually bankrupt. In fact, they're bankrupt. Sugar is dead. D-E-A-D, dead. It's done with. Jack Deere, they knew that. But because they want to continue to prop up their support base, Gaisuko, the sugar industry, has become basically like a welfare agency. And the reason why it's like a welfare agency, it is for political reasons and political purpose, because the PPP wants to hold on to their support base, which is in the sugar industry, those thousands of sugar workers, and they continue to fool them that sugar is still sweet, even though it is bitter, it is dead, and it has been in the ICU under the PPP regime. Wales Estate sugar workers were fighting for their salaries, were fighting for good treatment. There were other sugar workers throughout the sugar industry, sugar estates and these things. They were protesting. Sugar workers were beaten. Sugar workers were tear gassed. Sugar workers were locked up under the PPP, under Jack Deere's presidency. I know, because I was there with those very sugar workers. So those sugar workers and the supporters of the PPP have got to be reasonable. They've got to be honest when they're talking about the relationship between the coalition and sugar workers in Guyana. They have never seen the length of respect and appreciation for their work, their services, for a long time. They have never seen that in the PPP. Maybe Chetty Jagan had some sort of respect for sugar workers. And if he was alive, I'm sure that he would not have treated sugar workers the way Jack Deere, Ramotar, and Ali did. And in the case with Ali, he's currently doing. They don't want sugar workers to go out and develop themselves in other skills and other areas. They don't want to do that. But they continue to spread propaganda all across the sugar workers and estates in Guyana, all across. Lies upon lies upon lies upon lies. The PPP, the truth of the matter is, the PPP does not care about sugar workers. Now, this other thing that they're going around with cash grants. Cash grants. Every single thing, there's a cash grant. The cash grant is being used as a Ponzi scheme again, and I'm using the term David Patterson said about Amila Falls and the Berbice River Bridge and GPL and so forth, a Ponzi scheme. This is what this cash grant is all about. It is less to do with you, the people, less to do with you. They're not concerned about putting $25 in your pocket. So if they have $6 billion that's earmarked for cash grant, let us say for this We Care program, the bulk of the money is going into their friends and cronies' pockets, and crumbs you are receiving. That is what this is about. There's no proper policy. There's no proper approach to this thing. It's more propaganda than anything else. Propaganda. Propaganda. That is what it's about. And the PPP is known for that. Propaganda. So when they move around into your communities and they hug you, they put on their mask and they hug you, and they love when you throw mala around their necks so that they can take photographs giving you $15,000, which is about 75 US dollars. They want to take photographs so that people can see them and their propaganda can be seen around the country. And then the impression or this perception that they are a caring people, caring government. When in fact, the truth is that $15,000 is going to go down the drain by the end of the week. And you, the citizens, are back to square one. There's nothing else. There's no follow-up. The only time there will be a follow-up is when they see an opportunity to milk the system again by using you, the ordinary people. Now, with what they're talking about, if they were so concerned, as they say, we care, if they were so concerned, every school child should have received at least minimum $100,000. They can do it, but they don't want to do it. So they're going to give you 15 and they're going to take 50,000 for themselves each, from each child. That is what they're doing. It's a Ponzi scheme, a big hoax. They were never concerned about school children. They were never concerned about education. They campaigned on these things, but it means nothing to them. Remember, and this is one of the things that Jack Day spoke about on his propaganda show last evening with Neil Marks, right? Giving the impression that he and the PPP are so concerned about education. No, they're not concerned about education. They were never concerned about teacher or teachers. They never wanted to give teachers an increase in salaries and all these things. The unions had to fight and fight and fight and fight for these things. The teachers, senior teachers, had to fight and fight for duty-free concessions and so forth. They weren't concerned about these things for the 20-something years they have been in office. But now they're telling you that they are concerned about the education sector. You heard Winston Jordan last evening. It was the biggest sector, $50 billion. Because it shows that the coalition government was actually concerned about education. We saw how they treated teachers in the 5 years. More could have been done, but they have reached out more to teachers, given teachers more within the 5 years of the coalition government when compared to almost nothing done during the 20-something years of the PPP governments. Nothing at all. And so Jack Deal is the last person to want to talk about that. Teachers had to cry for their salaries. Teachers had to go on the roof of schools and protest for their salaries, to be treated with respect and dignity. The PPPC governments were never concerned about that. And so it is hypocritical to listen or to hear Bara Jagdeo talk about the education sector as though they really mean and as though they really want to do something to a sector that they have destroyed. How many of you remember hundreds of teachers left Guyana? They went to other parts, Botswana, and even in the Caribbean, and other parts of Africa, and even in the United States of America and Canada and so forth. Teachers had to leave because under the PPPC regimes, they were not respecting teachers. Salaries were low. High schools were being degraded. Labs shut down. There were hardly any computer labs, any other sort of labs for these students in the science fields and all these things. Nothing. They didn't care. All they were concerned about was to ensure that their friends got hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts to build the schools. And in a lot of cases, it was shabby work, incomplete, all sorts of things. All of these things happened under Jack Deere's tenure as president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Let's talk about free education. The PPPC and Jack Deo and Irfan cannot say to you, the people, that they are concerned about your future, especially young people, when it is Jack Deo and the PPP who destroyed young people and young people's future. You know why? Because they are the ones that started in 1993-94 for you young people, well, you've gotten older now, to pay fees at the University of Guyana. All these things they have done to you. I'm not talking about the hundreds of young people who they incarcerated. I'm not talking about that. So Jack Deo and his cronies are not concerned about young people or young people's future. He's talking about 20,000 scholarships and all these things. Fair enough. But the 20,000 scholarships that they're talking about, it's basically like you take your hand and you put it in a basket and you pull out a school. The schools that people never even heard of. So hundreds of millions of your money, hard-earned tax dollars, are going into schools that you've never heard of. Some may be in India, some may be in somebody's basement, some may be in somebody's attic, some may be in a small office somewhere in Queens. I'm sorry that I have to say Queens like that. In Queens or Florida or somewhere, even in Bronx, right? And so these folks are not concerned about young people. They're not concerned about their education. They're not concerned about the future. And now I say all of this based on their track record. The PPP's track record is horrible in those areas. And many of you already know that. So when they come to you with their propaganda, and Neil Marks and Jim, so, Mr. President, tell me something. You said, give me a break. Again, good evening to you, Neil Marks. And good evening to all of you. I see a lot of you are asking for the donkey. Not as yet. We're talking about it. And so, Jack Dare now, and are we talking about that lame propaganda work that they attempted last evening? They're talking about job creation now. Now let's talk about job creation. Unemployment was high, the highest we have seen under Jack Deo's presidency, under the PPP regimes. People were jobless. Young people especially. Thousands upon thousands of young people graduated from the University of Guyana, Cyril Potter College. And let's not even talk about, that college, Critchlow Labour College that Robert Bassad went, that they took away the subsidy and all these things and forced Critchlow Labour College to run to the ground. Run to the ground. That's what they did. But I was hoping that under the coalition government, much more should have been done to bring back alive Critchlow Labour College. That's another story, though, mind you. But let's stick to Jack Deo and the lies upon lies upon lies, right? In terms of education sector. They weren't concerned about that. They weren't concerned about civil servants. Civil servants were beaten, they were tear gassed, and all these things. They were disrespected. You name it, all of those things. So it is painful to sit and watch and listen to someone like Barrett Jack Deo, who thinks that he is probably one of the smartest. Well, to his supporters, some of them think that. But the chap hardly has much political sense. Maybe scampishness from a political standpoint, and maybe because those in the coalition who ought to be doing much to debunk these things that Jack Deo is saying are for the most part quiet. I don't know, but that's another story, right? They're quiet. Many of them probably on their way to the United States to protest in the United States, right? And people are punishing back home in Guyana. And people want proper representations in Guyana. But you don't see that. But they want to jump on a plane to come to another country to say that they're protesting in another country about things that are happening back home in their own country, when most of them don't protest, when most of them are afraid to protest because they don't want to get arrested, or maybe because they say COVID-19 is real. Of course, COVID-19 is real. COVID-19 is real in the United States of America too. But let's get back to Jack Deere, right? Let's get back to Jack Deere. 53 minutes after 9 o'clock. Let's get back to Jack Deere. The other thing that this guy Jack said, that he has evidence that David Arthur Granger, president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, tapped the phones of Harman, who else? Raphael Trotman, Valda Lawrence, and Jack Deere calling names upon names. I'm sure he probably was tempted to say that President Granger tapped the phone of Otisha, tapped the phone of some of the guys in the prisons, tapped the phones of some of the workers at the cathedral. I'm surprised that Jack Deere didn't say all of that. And Jack Deere is notorious for those sort of things. He is notorious. He's dropping in the people's conversations. I'm sure right now he's probably doing that to Anil Nandalal. He's probably doing that to Irfan Ali. He's probably doing that to some judges as well. And all these things. And so in order to divert attention so that he can sound as though he knows it all, that is Jack Deere. He knows it all, but yet he knows nothing. So he comes with you guys now, sort of a diversion to say that David Arthur Granger tapped the phones of Harman. You know what sort of seeds he's sowing there. Well, you know what he's doing there. But there might very well not be any truth to that. This is not to say that other folks weren't listening to conversations. Other folks, meaning maybe outside security agencies that were at that time and probably still listening to conversations, including Jack Deere's conversations. So when Jack Deere was listening to other people's conversations, maybe Anil Nandalal, maybe Irfan Ali, maybe some judges and so forth, there are other people listening to Jack Deere's conversations as well. So don't buy into that propaganda about David Arthur Granger listening to Joe Harman, listening to Valda, and the way he says it. The way he said that, you know that he is lying. You know that it is propaganda. Because let me say this to you guys. If I know I have evidence, and I sit in such a big office, I'm not going to sit down and say that, David Granger was tapping into Joe Harman conversation and Valda conversation at the latter part of the elections. You know, you're going to find a way to sneak that sort of evidence out, wouldn't you? You will give it to Neil Marks. You will give it to the other propaganda experts at Newsroom. Or you will give it to that guy out from that big house of Borbies there by the bridge. You'll give it to that guy. Yeah, that guy. Y'all know the guy, right? Y'all know that guy, right? That thing, right? But the fact is that what's his name? Jagger thinks that people are stupid. That people are that gullible. If he has that evidence, trust me, and I want all of you to hear and to understand that if he, Jack Deal, if you, Jack Deal, because I know you're watching, good evening. If Jack Deal had that evidence, he would not have been speaking about it. We would have been hearing parts of that conversation or those conversations. Because if someone is listening, and Jack Deere now has access to these things, he now has access to certain things from special branch. Because remember, he's expert. He's an expert. I remember the days when there were 24/7, 2 and 3 special branch officers assigned specifically just to me, right? So I know how the guy operates. Now, listen to me again, please. Let's make sense out of this. Jack Dale doesn't have any evidence that David Arthur Granger tapped the phones and was listening to conversations of Joe Harmon, Raphael Trotman, Valda Lawrence, etc. There's no evidence. But what some politicians in the Guyana police force may have said to him, Bossman, Chief, Bossman, you know, David Granger used to listen to the conversation. I know this, yeah. I know. That's the sort. Good evening to Mr. Hickens. How are you, sir? So that's the sort of conversations or information Jack Deere may have gotten from some politicians, some PPP politicians in the Guyana police force. All right? So that's exactly what has happened. Or the special branch, the head of the special branch, and other agencies, security agencies in Guyana, who, mind you, have failed lie detector tests. They have failed, many of them failed their polygraph test. Many of them failed it. But they're heading those agencies in the police force and so forth that are now reporting back to Jack Dale. All right. Now, here is why it's a lie. And I want all of you, regardless of how you may feel about David Granger, I know how some of you feel about him, right? I know. It's okay. It's democracy. But I doubt that that was the case. Remember, Joe Harmon was once head of the Army Intel, or what they call INCOR or whatever of the Army. He was an intelligence officer, a senior intelligence officer. And you can't tell me that Joe Harmon going to be so slack when it comes to his devices, phone device or whatever else, not to understand the game and to become a victim of something that he ought to be an expert in. So Jack Dale is just mama guying people. Mama guying people. Good evening to our Trinidadian friends who are watching, especially a good friend of mine, veteran broadcaster, Mr. Reddy Bishop. Good evening. So now, that's a lie. Unless Jack Dale slipped that tape, that evidence to Neil Marks and others, and let us hear it. What do you have to hide, Jack Dale? Let us hear it. Stop the propaganda, right? So no, hear what Jack Dale is saying to his supporters then. He's kind of sly about it, that he is going to, maybe. You know, for a moment, I thought he was addressing Neil Marks as baby. But he was actually saying maybe in 20 years' time. So here's how Slicky is attempting to do to his support base. He's giving that false impression that they expect to be in office for 20 years. Look at all the corruption that's happening now. Look at the misery. Even Lemon can tell you guys about this misery that people are faced with, including supporters of the PPP, including their support base. Some of them are right here on this show right now. They're not going to admit that they're punishing under the PPP regime right now. They're not going to admit that. But it is a fact. Now, let me get back to this propaganda and Jack Dio and his propaganda about this tapped phone conversations by David Granger and so forth. Here's how. He said, Jack Dio that is, that maybe he will reveal that evidence in 20 years' time. Give me a break. What 20 years? There's nothing stopping Jack Dio from revealing that evidence, like I've said. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. So I don't want you guys to run away with the idea that Jack Dio has these things in his hands and is holding it and that can expose the coalition and the leadership of the no. He sees that they have some problems. He also observed that they're throwing their dirty linens in public and they're fighting a brutal battle in public, not at Congress Place, in public. And Jack Dio wants to capitalize on that from a political standpoint by sowing these seeds of distrust. Let them fight each other. Let them distrust. Let them not trust each other. That is what he's doing. But don't forget that the PPP has serious problems because it is said that Jack Dio is spying on Anil Nandalal and on Irfan Ali. That is what I've been told, that he tapped the phone. I've been told that. Now, I don't know whether there's any truth to that, but knowing how Jack Dio operates, one has to listen to when people talk about these things, that Jack Dio, is probably spying on Anil Nandalal and has tapped into Anil's phone because he doesn't trust Anil politically. He doesn't. He also doesn't trust Irfan Ali. And so when a source says these sort of things, you got to believe this source because it sounds like Jack Dio. So whilst Jack Dio sits and he gives this impression that Granger was listening to these guys' conversations, Jack Dio is listening, possibly, mind you, conversations of those very people within the PPP. So the PPP has serious problems, very serious problems right now, because Jack Dio wants to control Irfan. Irfan is beginning to wear his own pants now and is fighting back against Jack Dio, just like Jack Dio fought back against Janet Jagan. And he said that she was a private citizen. In other words, he was saying to Janet Jagan, mind your goddamn business. That is all. Now, I knew that Jack Dio, when I was in Guyana, Jack Dio tapped my phone. So whenever I'm having conversations, I will begin by saying, good evening, Jack Dio. How are you, sweetheart? Because you know these things. And again, I go back to intelligence officer Joe Harmon. Joe Harmon should be aware of these things. But no, let's go to this slide. He said, Jack Dio, that in 20 years' time, he's going to reveal the evidence. He has no evidence, none whatsoever, none. I checked with some of these guys. I asked them. Well, I didn't even have to ask them because we all know it's propaganda. I checked in with some of the names that he mentioned. And you know what they did? They're all laughing. They're laughing because they believe that Jack Dare should be on the stage of the National Cultural Center, standing with those comedians in Nothing to Laugh About or whatever other comedy shows they have there. Standing because that's where he belongs. He is a joker, a political joker, and a three-card trickster. Now, look, let's get back to this evidence thing. Those of you, I don't know how many of you remember this, but almost 20 years ago, Jack Dare got on national television and he said that he has evidence, video evidence of certain PNCR leaders in Buxton with criminals. And they were planning assassinations, they were planning drug dealings, they were planning all these sort of things. Jack Dare said that. He said he has the evidence. He has it on video, he has it in audio form, every single thing. He says he has the evidence. And now let me put you guys through this here. Let me say that if Jack Dare had any evidence that PNCR leaders were with criminals, as he claimed, in Buxton, meanwhile the same Jack Dare was with criminals, that criminals were part and parcel of his own regime. Phantom Squad, drug lords, you name them. But he was talking about, quote unquote, the criminals in Buxton, not the ones that he was surrounded by. So he said that he has the evidence, video evidence. Again, don't you think that Jack Dare would have found a way to release this so-called evidence? It's over 15, 18 years now. Ask him, where is the evidence? Where did he push it? Well, don't ask him where he pushed it, because we all would know the response for that, right? Probably tucked it away in some old grip or trunk that he has. There is no evidence. So if he had no evidence then, but he claimed that he had the evidence, and he never showed you guys the evidence, and it's approaching 20 years now since he said that. Now he comes to you with another three-card tricks, that he has the evidence that Granger tapped the phones of Harmon, Valda, Raphael Trotman, and Cathy Hughes and so forth. This guy is a trickster. Again, he's coming to you with the same old trick. Do not buy into those tricks. Do not. We can go on and on and on and on about these tricks. He's now talking about, let's put that aside. We already killed that. You already know that it's a bunch of lies about tapping phones and so forth. And let's go into this employment, that they are going to create jobs. Jack Dare said in that propaganda with Neil Marks, right? Sorry. Good evening, Neil. He said in that propaganda interview that they are going to create jobs. What jobs? If for 20-something years, as I have said earlier, they couldn't create jobs, especially for young people, do you think they are going to do that now? They can't. They have no ideas, they have no policies, they have no vision, other than the vision that they have is to hustle and thief and thief and thief for the most part. Hustle. That is what they're about. In 2011, wasn't it Donald Ramotar who promised the people of Linden 3,000 jobs? 3,000 jobs. You go and ask that small man, Otto Martin, and others of Linden, What about the 3,000 jobs that Donald Ramatar promised the people of Linden? Where are those jobs? Nothing existed. Absolutely nothing. It was a propaganda, and they continue with these propaganda. They're talking about their elections manifesto. They don't believe in the manifesto. It was basically a propaganda tool to brainwash their support base. They talked about free education, but now they're saying later down in the government, maybe 2020 something. It is because they don't want to offer free education at the university level. They have no intention to do that. They talk about job creation. Jagdeo said that job creation under this regime, this installed regime that has been there for 1 year now. Where are those jobs, Jagdeo? And then he said the pandemic, the pandemic did a lot. No, for 23 years, you didn't have a pandemic. But we saw, apart from the corruption, the highest level of unemployment under your regimes for 20-something years. But you know, Jagdeo was the pandemic, and he continues to be that pandemic because they continue to lie to the people. Here's another lie. He said that under the coalition, and even under Burnham and all sorts of things, that people left the country in thousands. Another lie. Because if you check the record, compare the record from maybe 80 to 85, just 5 years of Burnham. Very few people compare to Jagdeo's regime. Very few people left the shores of Guyana. At least those that left legally. There were some who left via backtrack and all these different things, right? But we're not talking about backtrack. And speaking of backtrack, Jagdeo and Irfan Ali were talking about how Jagdeo prefers to be in the back room. In the engine room, right? In the engine room, in the back, all the way at the back, the engine room, right? Oh, gosh. He said that. But if you check the immigration, the numbers, you will see that thousands upon thousands of people left Guyana during the 20-something years, including thousands, over 20, 30, maybe 40,000 of their own support base left the shores of Guyana. They didn't leave under Forbes Burnham, who died 36 or so years ago. Recently, when they were installed, recently, look, this is at the passport office. People are continuing to join long lines to leave the country because they have no confidence in this PPP regime. They have absolutely no confidence. They're seeing the direction in which this regime is already going. And this regime has already failed the people of Guyana. If elections were to be held next week or next month, hopefully the opposition will get their act together. But the PPPC will be beaten, can be beaten. The PPPC regime is fragile, as can be. But because of the not so smart politics in lots of cases by those in the opposition, yes, I say those in the opposition, makes it look as though the PPPC is some sort of perfect regime, and make Jagdeo looks as though he's a bright boy in politics and economics and so forth and so on. The truth is, he is not. The truth is, he is far, far from that. And so this evening, Bharat Jagdeo deserves the highest prize that we can offer him right here on Straight Up 107.1 FM. I'm looking at some of your comments. You all know the highest prize we will offer him this evening. Here we go. He deserves this. He deserves this. One, two, three. We can't just give this back. Well, he said that he is in the back room. Neil Marks and him, they spoke about the back room. This back room. They're always with this back room thing. And now I don't want you guys to see my facial expression because I think this is becoming a norm now. And now he has added something new in that back room, engine. They're calling it the engine room. He likes to be around the engine now. Engine. So he deserves another award. He deserves it. Backroom guy, these backroom guys. It's not that they don't. Can they come up with other like descriptions, other rooms that they'll be in, like in the front office or in the office or something like that? And I prefer to be at the side and to ensure that I encourage. But these guys are always. I prefer to be in the back room with the engine, holding on the engine and turning things so that the party could keep going in the engine till the back room. Back room. Don't listen to his lies. Don't listen to the PPP's propaganda. And don't believe that the PPP cannot be beaten. Many of you thought they could not have been beaten in 2015, but they were beaten. In fact, they were beaten prior to 2015. Don't be fooled. The other propaganda is that Jagdeo felt that they won the 2015 elections, just as he felt that they won the 2011 elections and they didn't get a minority government. The reason why there was a minority government is because they tried to steal a seat to give them that majority, but it didn't work. And you remember the 2006 elections when they stole a seat from the AFC in region number 2, and Sam Hines squatted in that seat for 5 years. You all remember the 2001 elections, and I do believe that elections was actually won by Desmond Hoyt. You know, prior to that, the 1997 elections, that was vitiated 4 years after by Claudette Singh, who sits there now as the chairman of Guyana Elections Commission. Lots and lots of things. So Jagdeo has no moral authority to speak of free and fair elections. He has no moral authority to speak of democracy. Those are things he doesn't believe in. And I'm surprised that those things are coming out the mouth, maybe because he's in the back room. So those things will be coming out of his mouth in the back room, turning the engine. My name is Mark Benshap. I'll be back tomorrow, same place, same time, right here on 107.1 FM. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the evening and be safe. The other thing before I go, if you want to be vaccinated, feel free. Take your vaccines. Protect yourselves and your families, your loved ones, your friends, and everyone from that deadly COVID-19 virus. If you don't want to take the vaccine, well, that's your prerogative. I hope that you do, but it's your prerogative. Nobody can force you to, especially with experimental drugs. But I did. I took the Moderna. I took that chance. But if you're not going to take the vaccine, stay away from people. Put on your mask. Protect yourself. Protect others. Respect others as well. But I can't blame some of you, especially with the type of vaccines that they have in Guyana and the controversies. You've got to be apprehensive about that. I hope good sense prevails pretty soon. Not sure how accurate this information is, but very soon the regime will tell you that Delta strain is in Guyana. The Delta strain is in Guyana. Let's pray for that country. God bless you all. Don't worry about the lies and the propaganda. Spread it by Jack Geo and the PPPC. Don't worry with those lies. Don't believe those lies. And if you watch that propaganda sermon with Jack Geo and Neil Marks, you will know and you will treat it with just what it is. Political propaganda and lies. And it's not even good propaganda. It's what you call low-level, low-energy propaganda. God bless you all. Good night.
It's hard to be at peace with the ones who are so discard. It's hard. Them have a knife in your back and them smile it so broad. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. Cause the booby traps with them set is real. I never want to take your glory, Lord. Send your angels to encamp around about me and stand guard. To envy is so easy and to love it is so hard. Let me work for your glory and not for the award. Don't make me ever get caught up in the scream and the applause and go talk about the blessing and not talk about the Lord. All these things are vanity. I need your reward. Let me be real. Don't put on no facade. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. Cause the booby traps with them set is real. Sticks and stones can break my bones and words can harm me. They can harm me. When the evil come against me, you'll protect me. You'll protect me. Father, I need the strength of your son. Cause you know my work is not done. Lord, I need that endurance just to finish this race that I run. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. And help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. Cause the booby traps with them set is real. You tell me to stand firm, cause every little plan you have a confirm. I know them evil plan turn. In a darkness me a the lantern. So help me to deal with the ones that who said them love me when them really don't. Jesus, help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. Cause the booby traps with them set is real. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them. Give me place when the crowd are shout. Oh, Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus.